Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Big Apple Hockey. We've certainly had a lot of shows this week, to say the least, between ones that we've hosted and even guest spots like Mr. Folkowski did yesterday with Ranger Central. But today, we're talking about the Stanley Cup Finals and much more, even the road to the Stanley Cup. I, of course, am your host, Mark Williams. And as my things right there says, call Michael Buffer and let's get ready to rumble. All right. Philk, and sorry, I am joined by the one, the only, the host of the Final Buzzer, Mr. John Volkowski.
I feel like this is like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, where it's round 2 and fight, and there they go. But we are being joined by a guest today. My ears hurt now.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Sorry.
For anybody who has just gone deaf, that is due to Mark Williams and his yelling. So
yeah, I should have backed up from the mic.
Will be attributed to Mark Williams.
Let's
our guest, Mark.
Yeah, let's bring in our guest, Mr. Stat Boy Steven. Well, there you are.
The wrong one.
It moved on you, Steven. It was supposed to go right to you.
Mark is already in mid-season form. It's unbelievable. We haven't even started yet, and we already have our first Mark slip up. So, yeah.
All right, yeah. Well, you know what? I haven't used the GIF in a while. Cue up the GIF. So there we go. But better yet, let's go right to this one and the A block. As the A block is brought to you by SeatGeek. Use the promo code Big Apple Hockey for $20 off your first order. And of course, Big Apple Hockey trucker shirts and hats are available. Trucker hats and shirts are available. Anyway, I'm going with too much energy, guys. It might be the coffee that I got right here. That's good. But anyway, let's go to what happened Thursday night first. The Edmonton Oilers defeated the Dallas Stars 6-3, and Jake Ottinger was pulled after the first 2 shots. And then they didn't put him back in, which kind of raised a bunch of eyebrows. Philip, we're going to start with the team that lost. Did Pete DeBoer, coach of the Dallas Stars, blow it for them?
If this was bar talk, I'd tell you to get the hoop.
Yeah.
I would absolutely tell you to get the hoop for the layup here. I mean, it's how I don't understand how 3 of the first 4 shots that they had were all high slot chances, and 3 of them went in the net. And they pulled Ottinger after 2. And then DeSmith comes in. He lets up a weak goal right away. And then he lets up another weak goal for the 5th one. So what did Pete DeBoer think that he was going to accomplish by bringing in an untested backup, who I think the last time it's seen in a playoff action might have been against the Rangers in 2022? I mean, seriously.
I think he got some last year with Vancouver. I'm not sure. I have to look that up.
Maybe. But like any legitimate, like lengthy type of appearance. I mean, he came in for relief of Louis Domingue? It's at what point do you say, hey, Pete, what are you doing? Just take a damn timeout. Take a timeout. Like,
he did, though, right?
On the line.
He did.
Take the timeout, use it, and then, if you have to go to the goalie afterwards, then go to him afterward.
Mm-hmm.
Steven, I know you were saying something while I was going. I'm sorry.
Look, no, can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure.
No, we can hear you, yeah.
He did call a timeout, if I remember correctly. Then after the timeout, Ottinger skated back to the net, and then Pete DeBoer called him back to the bench. So it wasn't even communicated to him.
Yeah, okay. What's going on there?
It wasn't even. If you pull the goalie during a timeout, you tell the goalie you're pulled. But he didn't even tell him during the timeout. He told him after the timeout had expired, and Ottinger was on his way back to the net. It made no sense at all. Also, you're going up against Draisaitl and McDavid, and you're going with the backup. Really?
Right.
Third, and you made a good point, Phil. No argument about the defense in front of Ottinger on those first 2 goals. Come on, it's
terrible.
Look. It baffles me that Pete DeBoer has been to 6 out of 7 Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, that's staggering.
He made
That's
it to
staggering.
to the Western Conference Finals 6 out of the last 7 seasons. How does that happen with a coach that does this? I don't get it. Look, Dallas started the series well. They won game 1, and then McDavid just snapped. And McDavid was like, no more. And Dallas didn't have an answer for it. And that's not Ottinger. That's Dallas as a team. Their forwards weren't scoring. Their defensemen weren't making plays that they should be making. It's ridiculous. And if you look at the interviews after the game, all the players, when Ottinger was interviewed, I think Marchment was like tossing some tape that he scrambled up, tossed it at his head. You know, the players, if this is going to be a divide in the locker room, I know whose side the players are on.
Yeah,
no question. And
no
Pete
question about it.
Pete DeBoer may have signed his death sentence as death warrant as the Dallas Stars coach at this point. It's a stupid decision. And even if you do, right, the Smith comes in, plays poorly. Why don't you put Ottinger back in the second period?
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
The game was still close enough.
Yeah, he comes in and he lets up that soft goal right away. And then, I mean, if you wanted to just change things up, like, didn't this whole situation kind of remind you of like Mike Keenan with Mike Richter and Glenn Healy?
Yep.
The way that he handled it. I think it was even a worse version of that. The two other things that I wanted to talk about, Steven, you talked about like the forwards not scoring. Where was Matt Duchene? Where was Mason Marchment?
Where was Wyatt Johnson?
Where was Wyatt Johnson these last season?
Wyatt Johnson, I think, has the worst plus-minus in NHL history in a single postseason.
That's terrible. Like, if you look at their scoring lead, like, it's Mikko Rantanen with, I think, 21 points.
Yeah.
And then the next highest scorer is Thomas Harley with 12.
Who's a defenseman.
What happened to their forward group?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The other game this reminded me of, and I don't know if you remember this, Phil, but the 2014 World Juniors gold medal game, Russia against the U.S. with Shesterkin in net, and he gave up 2 goals in the first 2 minutes, and they pulled him, and it didn't do anything. Like, giving up early goals, like, you don't pull your starter for that.
Was that 2014? That was 2013, right?
It was the tournament that started in 2013.
Yeah, because that was the one that had Gaudreau and JT Miller and Jimmy BC on it. Yeah.
Anthony Duclair was on that team.
Yeah, Duclair and Domi were Canada.
I think Brady Shea as well.
Brady Shea played for the U.S.
Yeah. Anthony Duclair played in that tournament.
Dominated that tournament.
Yeah.
But
Shesterkin gave up 2 early goals in that gold medal game. They pulled him. And it's just, to me, pulling the goalie after 2 quick goals is not a solution.
No, it's not.
But
because if there's one guy in the entire building that knows that he needs to, that now he needs to like be focused, it's the goalie that just gave up 2 quick goals.
Yeah, can we talk about Matt Duchene having 0 even strength points and Jason Robertson pulling a no-show? Like, we give a lot of shit to Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin for not showing up, but Robertson did a complete no-show. Yeah. And this is a guy that had a 100-point season a few years ago.
Yeah. Look, as Ranger fans, we have our issues that we're very familiar with when it comes to the playoffs. Earlier today, I was having a discussion on Twitter with someone who said that Mika Zibanejad had a better career in the NHL than Erik Karlsson. So,
that's no.
And Erik Karlsson has more points in conference final games than Zibanejad, and they both had played 12 games. Like Ranger fans, we know where we fall short every year, but other teams are no different. Like the Dallas Stars, they're a good team. They have some talented forwards. They have some good defensemen. But the Dallas Stars on defense have the same problem we have. They have one side on defense that's good enough, and the other side is just non-existent.
Well, we'll get more into that in a little bit. Because
one other thing was Dallas, and this is more on Jim Nill than it is Peter DeBoer. But the one thing, and I think I said this yesterday with Evan and Matt, is that Jim Nill did not address the right side of that roster. Like when Cody Ceci is the one piece that you're bringing in, to address the right side of your defense, you've got issues. You got serious issues. And even if you want Thomas Harley playing on the right-hand side, which he can play, like, why are you not looking to bring in more depth there?
Yeah, and if you look at the Florida Panthers, which we'll get into, like they have made moves at the deadline. Of course, having Kachuk on LTIR with 9.5 million helps, but those are teams that made moves at the deadline because they knew they were close. What did Dallas do? Yeah, they added Rantanen, great, but they also gave up Stankoven. It was basically a 1-for-1 swap, and Stankoven in Carolina was phenomenal this postseason. Dallas is just kind of like the Rangers in the West. You know, they're good enough to win a couple of rounds, but never good enough to actually become a contender.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
So, are you telling me that their captain's about to torpedo their next season? Is that what's going to happen now?
I think Jamie Benn is a smarter guy than Jacob Trouba.
I think Jamie Benn is also a far better captain than Jacob Trouba.
Far better leader than
yeah.
Trouba, yeah.
Neither here nor there, though.
No. But yeah, look, Dallas had the unfortunate luck to run into the Edmonton Oilers. You know, the Oilers. We've talked about this for years, Phil, on HF boards on Twitter, that the Oilers were a joke. They were a 2-player team. It was McDavid, Draisaitl, and then a bunch of nothing, and they had nothing on defense. But look at them now, back-to-back Stanley Cup Final appearances. Mm-hmm. They have finally addressed their weaknesses.
Well, actually, that's going to get into the next point in 1 second. But first, I just wanted to say this, Stephen. I'll come right back to you. But as far as this goes, this is what the problem with Pete DeBoer is. He just gets to a certain level and then just makes a boneheaded decision or a mistake, and his teams can never get over the hump. It's one thing. It's like, great. He's got the Devils and the San Jose Sharks in the Stanley Cup Finals, and the Sharks were actually challenging Pittsburgh for some of the finals. But, you know, the Devils, they really weren't in it against LA. But
and the only reason he made the Stanley Cup Final with the Devils is because we played like 75% of our players in that conference final against them. You know, we didn't have a fourth line, we didn't have a third pair.
Well, no, because that team just that was a thinner team. And you know what? Actually, I gotta owe the Devils a little bit of an apology because I believe the first 2 games went to overtime, and before they went up 3-0 in that series. But again, with DeBoer, how do you pull your best, arguably your best player? I know the numbers aren't right. When he's constantly in the 800s, it's either what's gone wrong with him or what's gone wrong with your defense. They were giving up too many high danger chances. And like, who's stopping the Corey Perry goal to start the game? And then Janmark gets in all alone. I mean, that's one-on-one with a goaltender.
I think
goalie.
Yeah, I think the problem here is the same thing the Rangers had under Gallant in 2022. Although the Rangers weren't as good a team, Dallas is a team that has enough talent to make it to the Final Four, but they don't have the pedigree or the coaching to then take it to take that next step.
Yeah, but Rick Bowness was able to get him to the next step against, oddly enough, a Pete DeBoer-led team. Like they beat the Vegas Golden Knights that Pete DeBoer was in. I mean, it's and then for him to come out, by the way, and say his statement of, well, he's 1-5 against the Edmonton Oilers. Oh, shut up! Like, really?
If you look at Dallas,
this conversation is going to last all summer now.
Yeah, but if you look at Dallas, I mean, a better comparison is actually Carolina, which is what makes more sense anyway. Dallas and Carolina have the same problem. They have good players, but they don't have players that win you a game when it matters most.
Yeah.
Right. They are missing those guys. Edmonton has Draisaitl, McDavid. I would put Adam Henrique in that conversation too, because he can score some really timely goals when it really matters. Right.
Bouchard.
Bouchard. Florida has Barkov, Kachuk. Now they have Marchand. Reinhart, Lusterinen, Lundell. like that Florida team is very deep. Tampa, we've talked about this in the past. Tampa with Kucherov and Palat and Cirelli, they have so many players that when three of your best players have an off day, they still have two other guys that they can fall back on. But if the best
Yeah,
player, if the three best players on Dallas and the three best players on Carolina are having a bad day, what are you left with?
that's all she wrote. That's what it is. Because
Yeah,
by the
I'm
way,
with you
Steven, you're
on
right
this.
about this. Because the objective of the other team that you're playing against, they're going to try to take away what you do best. That's what every team in sports does against the other team. So you have to figure out how to win. Either the star that's getting defended against has to figure out another way to win, Artemi Panarin, or they just turn it up a notch to another level, like the way McDavid does. But that's the true greats.
Yeah.
I mean, the true greats are able to do that.
Yeah. And one of the reasons the Rangers made it all the way to the Cup final in 2014 was that despite lacking a true first line, they essentially had 3 second lines.
Yeah.
Because their third line of Pouliot, Brassard, Zuccarello was going up against their top lines and making shit happen. Like Brassard scored some goals against the Penguins when their best players were on the ice.
Game one.
Yeah.
Depth.
Game one, overtime winner.
Yeah, depth gets you far. Is that the goal where he scored and they didn't count it, and then Richard
they
scored?
didn't count it. Pouliot put it in.
Pouliot scored.
Pouliot put it in.
Back, reviewed it, and gave it to Brassard. I was in a hotel. I got down to North Carolina for a weekend festival concert, Rebellion, and we had just gone in, and that came on. I was like, I am throwing this on the TV. I don't care who wants to watch it. We are watching this game, and we watched it like it was 6 of us in a hotel room watching that game.
Yeah. But if you lack the depth that teams like Florida and Tampa and Vegas and Washington when they won their cup, if you lack that depth, you're not going to make it to the Stanley Cup final. It's just not good enough. And let's be real here. Carolina with Rod Brindamore. I know everyone thinks the guy walks on water, but
down there they think it.
I don't see it. I'm sorry, I don't see it. Pete DeBoer and Rod Brindamore don't have that extra gear that they can add to the team with their coaching. It just doesn't exist.
Is it fair to call Rod Brindamore hockey's Tony Dungy pre-Colts? I mean, that's one of the guys I can think of, or even hockey's Buck Showalter. So Christ Kreider, oh boy.
Get the token.
We should have had a TV. I should have had a T-shirt for that. I wish we had a little bit more.
Oh my god!
But, all right,
someone in a toga with Kreider's face on it, walking on water.
No, but
again,
sorry, Mark. I think Alain Vigneault is a good comparison. Alain Vigneault is a guy that make sure everyone's happy in the room. But if you don't have the leaders in your room that just take the game by the throat and win it for you, you're not going to get there. Vigneault had this problem with the Sedins in Vancouver. He had the problem in New York that we didn't have players that would win a game like that. The
LA Kings, Marty St. Louis 3 to 5 years earlier, I think we could have won with that.
Yeah, the LA Kings won 2 cups, and the most talked about player is Justin Williams.
Yeah,
those are the players that and of course Kopitar as well, and Richards and Carter, but you need players up and down your lineup that can win you a game when you're facing elimination, that can win you a game.
For them.
Sorry?
Doughty was a big one for them.
Doughty
I would
too.
Argue that Doughty was probably the second most important player on that team behind Kopitar. Yeah. And then I would say Williams at maybe 4. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just had the timely goals at the right times. But
with Williams, that's what I mean, right? He scores goals when the first line is tied up, when the second line has an off game. You still have a guy like Justin Williams that can score you a goal. Yeah, Dallas just doesn't have the depth that Edmonton has. Look at Edmonton. They added they claimed Kasperi Kapanen off waivers,
Yeah.
and he even scored a couple of goals for them.
And Jeff Skinner gets back in the lineup, and he's the one that puts in the third goal.
Jeff
So-
Skinner back in the lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
there is a notable difference between Edmonton and Florida, and then Dallas and Carolina. Like these
Yeah.
conference finals weren't close for a reason.
And also, Steven, this is where skill only gets you so far. This is when they talk about jam. You need jam because you need those guys that grind out games. The Stanley Cup Finals and playoffs, that's a grind. You have to win 16 games and 4 against each opponent on the way in. It is a grind and a half. You have to mentally do it. You have to get through it. And I mean, you look at what Carolina did just in game 5. They're up 2-0. They're starting to feel like, oh, we're going to survive the game 6. Florida then turns around and goes, no, we're taking the lead. 3 consecutive shots. 3 consecutive shots found the net.
I think, if I remember correctly, reading this somewhere, this is the first time in like 25 years that both Stanley Cup finalists haven't had home ice advantage until they get to the final.
Wow, 25 years.
I think so. I'd have to look it up. It's been a while.
That's crazy.
Because the Oilers will have home ice advantage for the first time now in the Stanley Cup final.
They didn't the Gretzky era? Yeah, they did the Gretzky era. I know that, but I mean, yeah, I know what you mean. For the first time this year, I went all the time, Steven.
But this whole matchup, you know, getting a rematch of last year, it does really bring you the headlines, right? Because you had Gretzky who did it in his first 2. He lost his first final against the Islanders, and then won against the Islanders the following year. Crosby did it against the Red Wings in back-to-back years, and now you have McDavid, you know, so I mean the storylines write themselves with this one.
Well, actually, that's leading in perfectly right here with Steven. I was going to highlight thoughts on the Oilers run back to the finals. So, Phil, what are your thoughts on the Oilers run to get back here?
They finally bought in. One other thing I wanted to say, to kind of like to talk about what you guys were talking about just before, and it kind of leads into what I'm going to say here with this, is that I've always said that you have to have players that are not LeBron taking the last shot. They're Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan taking that last shot. They're killers. They're dogs. They smell blood. They're sharks. They smell blood in the water, and they gobble up their prey, and that's it. And it's over. And Dallas doesn't have that, but Edmonton does. They got 2 guys, and when they smell blood in the water, that's it. That's it. You're screwed. So Connor McDavid has just. I didn't think it would happen this soon, and it's kind of happening around the same age that it happened for Steve Yzerman and Mike Modano when they met up with Scotty Bowman and Ken Hitchcock, respectively. But he's turning the corner and he's buying in. And he's finally understanding that he has to play more of a defensive game to win. And the point totals, while they're down, they're still near his regular season output. And that's scary. That's a scary thought for any team, even including the Florida Panthers and their depth. Because now you have a guy that you brought up the whole point about losing before you win, learning how to lose to win. They've already done that. And this is a pissed off and angry team. And you want to know how I can tell that? Look at their reactions after that meltdown in game 1. You didn't see panic. You didn't see frustration. You just saw an angry, intense, and focused bench. That's a scary, scary thought for the Florida Panthers. And that's why I can see Edmonton finally getting the job done. Because they understand it. When Wayne Gretzky said that he went back through the lower parts of the arena and went past the Islanders locker room, and he saw how somber they were and how they were just like, they weren't even celebrating. It was just like they took care of business. Connor McDavid experienced that, and he understands it. And I don't know how much more scary a freak player like McDavid can be when he starts to understand things like that and starts buying in to what needs to be done to win. So,
because the difference is also that now, of course, there are some changes. Some players have joined since last year, but for the most part, on both teams, on the Oilers side, you have guys that have gone through that terrible Game 7 loss last year, where they came back after being down 3-0, by the way. People maybe forget that, but if the Oilers have at least one decent performance in the first 3 games, they win that final, right? But they've gone through this, the worst experience you can ever have, losing a Stanley Cup final. So they want to do everything in their power to prevent that from happening again. And on the other side, you have the Florida Panthers, where, yes, of course, you want to win another cup, but the pressure is not on as much as it was last year, because the Florida Panthers last year came off that experience where they lost the Stanley Cup final against Vegas, but now when they have a Stanley Cup already in their back pocket, I'm not saying they're going to take their foot off the gas, but at this stage of the competition, the margins are so wafer thin that might actually be the deciding factor for Edmonton. And also, what's impressive about Florida is that they're doing all this without Matthew Tkachuk being 100%.
They're doing this without big contributions from a lot of their guys.
Yeah.
And that's what's really impressive about Florida. You're just seeing so much depth. We're going to get more into this in a second. First things first, just my thoughts on the Edmonton run back. I already know who the Conn Smythe should be, and I'm going to say a little bit tongue-in-cheek. The most valuable player for Edmonton in the playoffs is Jim Hiller, because he doesn't challenge that goal in Game 3. Maybe LA takes a 3-0 series lead. Instead, he hands them the lead. Like, what are you doing? And then Edmonton could have been down 3-1 the series, but Bouchard gets a bomb. They end up scoring in overtime on Draisaitl. I mean, it's just they could have been dead and buried, because after that game, starting in Game 5 of that series, this team has been defensive and the best offensive team. They have the biggest shot margin differential in the entire series, the entire playoffs of any team that was remaining going into the conference finals. They are bought in. And again, you know what, Steven, I was going to save this for maybe afterwards. We'll do this right before we do the Stanley Cup Finals preview. Is Chris Knoblauch the one that got away for the New York Rangers?
Oh, I like that you asked me that question, because I have a very interesting response to that. I know a lot of Ranger fans feel this way, like, oh, Chris Knoblauch, look at what he's doing in Edmonton. Here's the thing, right? And I'm going to be a little nuanced here. I'm not convinced that Chris Knoblauch with the current Rangers team would have done better than Peter Laviolette in his first year.
No, he wouldn't have.
Right? However,
you're correct. Keep going. Keep going. I think we're about to say the same thing.
However, Chris Knoblauch has done better with a Connor McDavid-led Oilers team than any other coach in the last 10 years. Both of these things can be true.
I think, Steven, the big mistake the New York Rangers made, and Phil and I were caught up in the Gerard Gallant sweepstakes and the Gerard Gallant train. Bring Gerard Gallant in. It was evident from that St. Patrick's Day game on in the 2 weeks. Chris Knoblauch was the coach for that team. He should have been the coach of the Rangers right after David Quinn. They made the mistake. They went to the veteran coach probably a little bit too early. I know the viewers, everybody, they always said Chris Knoblauch, Mark. I'm like, for last season, you had to go with a veteran coach by that point. You already got to one conference finals. You had that collapse in the first round, and that's the only way to say it is collapse, because you don't go from winning, 11-0 or 11-2 in the first 2 games versus the Devils to just looking defeated completely by the time they were done. But Chris Knoblauch's done a hell of a job in Edmonton, and yes, because he's got the ties to McDavid, but he just constantly make adjustments, and he does it after wins.
Yeah, look, I love what Knoblauch is doing in Edmonton. I really do. But to your point, 2021 should have been the year to give Knoblauch the job.
Mhm.
Once you come off Gallant in 2023, there's no way you put a first-time coach in front of that group. I have no problem with it, but I'm also not convinced that if you put Knoblauch in front of this group, we're gonna have a similar situation, because let's be honest here. McDavid is now what, 27, 28,
Mm.
28. Draisaitl is 29 or 30. These are players that are at their right, and they are playing a more responsible game, and it does help. It does help when you have the best player in the world on your team, just like Mike Sullivan had a decade ago. Like, everyone talks about, I don't want to turn this into a Rangers podcast, or technically it is, but Mike Sullivan won 2 cups, but he won 2 cups with Crosby and Malkin and Letang and Kessel.
Dan Bylsma won a cup.
Exactly. And so I'm really curious to see how.
You love stats, Steven.
Yeah.
You love stats. Here's a stat for you. You know that there's only been 2 pairings of 1-2 center duo scoring over 70 points in one postseason combined.
Okay. Is McDavid
Draisaitl
one of them?
right? You know who they are, right?
McDavid Draisaitl?
That's the one that's most recent. Who's the other one?
Crosby Malkin. 2015? No.
Gretzky and Messier, 85.
Oh,
all right. I thought that was what you were going to say.
And Knoblauch had the guys that scored over 70 points and lost. So are you going to tell me that Chris Knoblauch is a great coach when he had 2 all-timers and lost with 2 all-timers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, listen, I'm not saying he's Dan Bylsma. I'm not. I think Chris Knoblauch's a better coach than Bylsma ever was. Bylsma won a cup because he got 60 points combined out of Crosby and Malkin with two-way play, and Malkin didn't get suspended after game 2 when he jumped Zetterberg at the end of the game. Should have been suspended for that.
See, I thought 09 Malkin and Crosby also hit 70, but they hit 60.
It's 60 between the two.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is that must be really high up on that list.
It is.
Right?
It is.
But look, Knoblauch has had a really good first 2 years in Edmonton. Not taking anything away from that, but it like I said, it does help that he has McDavid and Draisaitl, and you know, the Rangers have never had a player as good as Draisaitl, let alone as good as McDavid on their team. Maybe Yager, 506 comes close, maybe, but in the history of the Rangers, we have never had a 1-2 punch that comes even close to McDavid Draisaitl.
Oh no, not ever.
No.
When you were saying just Draisaitl, I was going to try to say 91-92 Messier, but no, they've never had a 1-2 punch like that.
A 1-2 punch, and look at Florida. Florida has the best two-way center in the league in Barkov. They have Sam Bennett, who's probably going to get $9 or $10 million a year this summer from a team. And then they have guys like Lundell and Lusterinen and Marchand and Reinhardt, and these are by far the 2 best teams in the league.
Agreed.
And my only question to you is, Mark, which of these 2 teams had a tougher road to the final, in your opinion?
Well, and this was what we talked about. What I talked about yesterday when I was on with Ranger Central. Florida really had a somewhat easy road. They had the biggest paper tiger in the world in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They killed Tampa.
Yeah, but Tampa, really, a lot of us had either right here this weekend, or winning it.
Yeah, I mean they were winning my bracket, but whatever. But the one team that really kind of did anything to them was Toronto. And that was partially because Bobrovsky played like ass in that series. And, while Edmonton had to reverse sweep LA, then they go and they dominate Vegas, which is a good team, very good team. And then they dominate Dallas, which is another very good team.
Yeah. Winning 3 games on the road again, winning 2 games in Dallas, of course. After those first 2 games they lost to LA, they have been 12-2.
Yeah.
Since they lost back-to-back games in Los Angeles, they have gone 12-2 to make it to a final. So it's tough. It's tough to really say who had the tougher. I think Edmonton had the tougher road to the final, but Florida made it harder than it should have been against Toronto.
And again, it truly is amazing because going back to, like I said, Game 5, that was April 28th. Edmonton, shots per game, they had the second most because Carolina has those useless shots. Edmonton shots are not Carolina shots. Edmonton had 29 shots per game, and they had 25. This is including the conference finals, though. 25 shots against per game. It's just they were able to keep the puck away from the troubled areas. Stuart Skinner is playing good, but Stuart Skinner is playing good because this team is playing team defense. And we always talked about McDavid finding
That's
things.
what you need.
Exactly. Yeah. But we talk about McDavid always trying to improve. Every single year, there's something else he was trying to improve. Oh, a shortened season? Shortened season? Oh, I can get 100 points. Oh, wait, I'm not a goal scorer? I'll lead the league in scoring. Now his target is I'm going to defend like no one else. And that's where he has been exceptional. And by the way, just to recap and just to give the intro, we're going to skip the series overview for this. But the last Stanley Cup Finals rematch, of course, was 2009. Pittsburgh beating the Detroit Red Wings. In the last 2 finals rematches, the Islanders and the Oilers being the other one, the Oilers got their revenge. That was a Mark Messier winning his first or his only Conn Smythe, come to think of it. And
84 rather, yeah.
He had the goal where he split Morrow and Potvin and scored, and that was like the goal that changed and brought Oiler hockey back in. So let's get into some of the X factors. We already have been talking about some of this. Phil, start with yours.
I mean, I hate to be cheap and go easy, but I mean, X factor for Edmonton has got to be Stuart Skinner. It's got to be him. I mean, if you're getting solid, reliable goaltending with timely saves, they have a very good chance of winning this. If not, and he's the Stuart Skinner that started off this postseason, then they're screwed. For Florida, ooh, it's a good one. That's really, really tough. I want to say Anton Lundell because it's gonna be. Sorry, Steven. But it really comes down to me is, are they going to be McDavid and Barkov can end up being a wash. Like if those two wash themselves out, then it comes down to what can Draisaitl do against Lundell. And last year, Draisaitl was not healthy in the finals. He was clearly injured, and he was clearly trying to play through it. And now you have a healthy Draisaitl that's firing on all cylinders. And Draisaitl has always been an underrated defensive player. I mean, over the last few years, he's actually one of the leaders in takeaways amongst forwards. So he's a guy that's always had an underrated and decent defensive game. If he can get some goals and points on Lundell, because Lundell's going to be on him unless they put McDavid and Draisaitl together.
Yeah.
But
which Florida would then say thank you because that's going to be Alexander Barkov's job.
Yeah, but can Barkov stop the both of them?
It's a little bit
Can
tougher.
Barkov
Yeah.
stop the both of them with a Sam Reinhart that's clearly not healthy on his line? That's going to be the question.
Yeah,
But,
and that's sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'll finish up real quick. If Draisaitl can get the points on Lundell, then that puts pressure on Barkov to not only have to shut down McDavid, but then get more points himself, because you got to close the gap somehow, and you got to make that up. If you're looking at this from a strictly mathematical standpoint, you can simplify it that way, and that's what it comes down to for me. So that's why I chose Lundell for Florida.
Yeah.
And by the way, Steven, just to be to be fair, I would also say Anton Lundell all the time too. So I was right there.
Yeah, but he's a guy that really has shown in tough moments that he can help his team get a timely goal. For me, like if I have to name someone else on both teams, it's probably Tkachuk for Florida, because if Tkachuk can play better than he has so far in the first 3 rounds, that is an X factor for Florida. The fact that they got this far this quickly without Tkachuk being 100% is pretty impressive. And for Edmonton, I mentioned it earlier, but Adam Henrique, if you have McDavid and Draisaitl that have an off day, if Adam Henrique can score a couple of goals for them, that could swing the series their way. Overall, I think Edmonton is a better team now than they were a year ago, and I don't feel the same about Florida. So I do think Edmonton has the edge.
I don't know. I agree with you on half that sentence. I look at Florida and I almost think that they're bulletproof now. They're missing Kevin Stenlund though from last year, but they got Brad Marchand, who really elevated that third line.
They did, but is Jones an upgrade over Montour on your blue line?
I think it's a little bit to be continued, but I'm leaning towards where you're saying. So, because Brandon Montour
and Florida's still a really good team. Let's get that right. Florida's a really good team. I just think they were overall a better team 12 months ago than they are right now. Also because Tkachuk is not 100% healthy, Sam Reinhart is not 100% healthy. If those two guys are healthy, then yeah, it's a different conversation. But those are two of their impact players, and they're not able, especially Tkachuk, is not able to play the way he wants to play.
Yeah,
that is a tough one to overcome.
I almost can't wait to hear what the news on Tkachuk is going to be at the playoffs. Go ahead, Steve.
Especially now when you get to the final, like we said, the further you get into postseason, the smaller the margins are.
And I hate to reuse some of these from the conference finals, but my X factors is going to be defense scoring for the Panthers. You guys said it best. They are not getting the production out of some of these guys like Matt Tkachuk. Reinhardt's starting to come around a little bit, but he's not healthy. So that's why Florida, having 7 defensemen that have scored a goal in this postseason, that's what's making that critical for their success. Can they keep putting up points? And also, obviously, keeping the puck out of their own net. The Panthers, if they're going to do that, they'll win the series. This series is going to be an absolute slugfest. So everybody should settle on in. For the Oilers, for the Oilers, again, I'm going to go with shot differential. Generate more shots and keep the pucks away from Stuart Skinner. Make it easy for him. He's gotten, 3 shutouts since they put him back in, and 2 of them were consecutive against Vegas. Stuart's they could do something, Steven.
Yeah, and for Edmonton, Ekholm is finally back. They added Klingberg and Wallman on their blue line, so they are just a more well-rounded team than they were a year ago. And McDavid and Draisaitl playing a more complete game. Yeah, they may not have the same output offensively, but does it really matter? Because last year they would win games 6-5. Now they win them 3-1, 3-2,
or 1-0,
or 1-0. So also, Mark and Phil, this will be the first time in the salary cap era that both teams will have a player in the lineup in the final that they claimed off waivers.
Wow. All right.
Forsling for Florida and Kapanen for Edmonton.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Steven, Phil can't take away your answers on this one. Give me an under the radar player for each team.
Under the radar. I don't know if he's really under the radar for Florida at this point, but Luostarinen. I'm not sure if he counts as an under the radar guy for them, but I think he could really be a difference maker on the third line, with Marchand and Lundell. And he has had his moments already in the postseason. For Edmonton, probably Kapanen. If Kapanen can score a couple more goals like he did earlier, that's exactly what Edmonton needs. Depth scoring is what gets you to a Stanley Cup at some point.
By the way, Steven, is this also the alphabetically speaking? Yeah, the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. You might know this. Is there any other time that 2 consecutive finals in any sport have been with the 2 teams alphabetically adjacent to each other?
It's such an OCD question. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. That's not like, I think I'm OCD. That hasn't even crossed my mind. So
I just thought of it just now as I'm doing that. So yeah, Phil, give me your under the radar players. Oh. All right.
He's thinking.
Yeah, I'm refreshing through my lineup right now.
That's a good question.
Riveting radio at the moment.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. I don't like the whole, dead silence here. I mean, for Florida, I don't know how under the radar he can really be in terms of name value, but in terms of production and what some of the other guys in this lineup can do, I would say Marchand for Florida.
Mm-hmm.
For Edmonton, wow, that's a real tough one too. Wow. Under the radar, I'm gonna go Jake Wallman in Edmonton.
Ah, you bastard.
Yeah, and I was talking about this I was talking about him on Rangers Central yesterday. He just played so well, and I know plus minus. Mark apparently likes plus minus more than anyone, and that's probably why he's going to it. I don't think that Jake Wallman's plus minus is something to scoff at. No. I think he's playing very well. I think he's been a huge, huge addition for him.
I still cannot believe Yzerman gave up a second-round pick to get rid of him.
Yeah, what was he doing? I never understood that.
And then 8 months later, Greer trades him to Edmonton for first.
You know what? By the way, just a quick aside. Everybody's saying that, or they're all the criticisms of Mike Greer being a GM, they're starting to fade away now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I really hope he can do us another favor this summer.
That would be nice. That would be awfully nice. For Florida, I thought about trying to say somebody like a forward, like maybe a Thomas Nosek or something like that, but it's going to have to be Nico Mikkola. If he could produce the way that he's been producing, I mean, he's been such a solid defenseman. And you're talking about a guy on a bottom pair with Nate Schmidt. I really that's what shuts down and helps matchups so much more when you can just because they're going to try to match up McDavid against other than the top defenseman. And when your bottom defenseman can take on that role, at least temporarily, that helps everything so much more. And for Edmonton, part of me wants to say Victor Arvidsson, but I'm going to go with TSN Mark. Because he had the goal in the last game. He's actually got 3 goals. I had to do that because Phil took my Jake Wallman. The easy one to say, I mean, he's not under the radar is Corey Perry, but everybody's talking about him. And even Evander Kane, he's made himself very much known everywhere. But Janmark in that third line, they're going to have a lot of work to do, probably against the Bennett unit, I'd say. Because you're going to see, I think Lindell if they split up McDavid and Draisaitl, that's Lindell's going to get Anton Lindell is going to get Draisaitl. All right.
I wonder how much Corey Perry has started to hate losing, because if the Oilers lose, that is 5 finals losses for Corey Perry,
and with 4 different teams.
With 4 different teams, yeah. He has now played more. He has now played more playoff games without the Ducks than he has with the Ducks.
That is crazy to even think about.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's played a lot and won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, he won a Stanley Cup with them.
Yeah, he won in his second season. Crazy to think about.
And even after the Stanley Cup, they always had deep runs. They were always going up against Chicago and LA.
Hey guys, you want to think about something funny? That Stanley Cup win was when Ryan Getzlaf had hair.
Oh, all right. Phil, gonna go right back to you. I'll start you with this question. The Edmonton Oilers will win the Stanley Cup if
for me, biggest thing is breaking out of the zone, and that's something that Edmonton showed that they can do last year against Florida. Florida's game plan works against teams that don't properly execute breakouts, that can't make that good, reliable first pass to get their offense going. Because when you do that, you can break out of the zone as a 3 to 5 man unit, and you can break out through the neutral zone with speed, and that backs Florida off. Seth Jones, who is not great defensively by any means, is someone who will back off that line if someone like a McDavid or a Draisaitl or a Nugent Hopkins can gain that blue line with speed. And that will result with that in Edmonton getting sustained offensive zone time. And if you keep Barkov in their line, or Reinhardt's line, or Kachuk's line, or whoever's playing on whoever's line in their own zone, you're going to have a much better chance of beating the Panthers. And the more shots you put on Bobrovsky, the more chances that he has of having one of his little things where he falls apart and does whatever, where he just gets in his own head, because that's what he does. So, yeah, I think the Oilers can win the cup if they just maintain their own, if they maintain their breakouts, and if Stuart Skinner just again gives you reliable goaltending. Just not, he doesn't have to be Hasek, he doesn't have to be Belfort, he doesn't have to be Brodeur. He just has to be reliable. Hell, all he has to do is be Bill fucking Ranford. That's it.
Of course, by the way, if he is, then that means he should ask for $11.5 million. Steven. Steven, the Oilers will win the Stanley Cup if
they prevent Florida from scoring first. Because if there's one thing Florida does well, when they get a lead at first, they shut it down. Like the Florida Panthers usually struggle a little bit if they are coming from behind, if they have to come back into the game. If they can be solid defensively and prevent Florida from scoring first, they have a good chance of even winning game 3 or 4 in Florida. I think the home ice advantage for Edmonton is also going to play a factor, which they didn't have last year.
All right, and I'll go for mine. They're gonna have to try to out physical Florida. It's gonna be. I think they might have to because
I don't think you'll have to.
I think that's how they get you, because Florida would love teams to move away from their own blueprint. That's how they get you. But
all right,
sorry.
Well, no, hey, you know what, guys? That's where it's, because I'll get to the Florida part in a little bit. Like there was the talk about the fight challenge in the first I think it was game 1 that one of the Dallas players turtled, and they just went, all right, Edmonton's got this. But there was because they were talking about that on Spit and Chicklets. But it's, you know, you look at Edmonton, like Ekholm being back is going to be huge for them, and they've just had a different mindset ever since Game 5 of the LA series when they tied that series at 2. And they were dead and buried after the first two games. And I'm patting myself on the back when I said LA in 6. So, Steven, now you get to lead it off. The Florida Panthers will win the Stanley Cup if.
It's going to sound like a cliche, but if Barkov can neutralize McDavid, they have better depth in lines 2, 3, and 4. I think the top line is definitely Edmonton's. Like McDavid, no one's better than McDavid in the world. Like, I would go so far to even say that McDavid in his prime is better than Crosby was in his prime, although people may disagree with that. But if they can neutralize McDavid, even if it's for half a game, if Barkov can neutralize him, that will be their key to success.
Phil?
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious thing. If you can neutralize the two of them, then obviously you're going to win.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention was stay out of the box, which they've had some issues with this postseason. You know, they go a little bit overboard physically sometimes, and if you put Edmonton on the power play, good luck.
Yeah, I was.
That's Russian roulette.
Marchand's league-leading penalty minute count is not going to help Florida in this series, so he's going to have to tone his game down quite a bit if he wants to make sure, because 46 penalty minutes, that leads all players, and you put Edmonton on the power play.
Do you have the list there?
Is this dude serious? What did you forget that Leon Draisaitl existed? What's in the water in Florida, dude?
No, but I mean, he is on the top line anyway. He's on McDavid's right.
But Phil, do you have that in front of you? What's the second most penalty minutes this season?
No, I don't. But it's probably somebody on Florida, because Nico Mikkola has 33.
Okay, let me actually look that up then.
Let's see. I got
33.
Florida with 46.
Serena with 23. Bennett with 26. Kachuk with 29. I mean, these are guys that take a ton of the penalties, and if they continue, and that's what happened last time.
Yeah. So it's Marchand, Mikkola, and Kachuk in the top 10. In the top 10.
Yeah, and Braden Shen has the 6th most penalty minutes, and he hasn't played a game in over a month.
Braden Shen's a gamer, though. I would take him on my team in the playoffs in a heartbeat.
Yeah, very much so.
A gamer right there, and he was a gamer at the junior level too.
Yeah, they have 6 in the top 15 in penalty minutes. Florida.
Yeah, and that's you put Edmonton on a power play, and that's absolutely going to be a recipe for disaster.
The highest on Edmonton is Podkolzin with 18 minutes, which is tied for 17th.
It wasn't. Oh God, it was not. Well, I have an idea of who it was. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was not who you're thinking. I can tell you that right now. It's not who you're thinking, and it was not Bedard's mom either.
Steven, you were saying about Puck Colson?
Podkolzin leads the Oilers in penalty minutes with only 18.
Yeah,
which is fewer than the top 6 in penalty minutes on Florida.
And last year, Florida made it because they didn't take penalties. Now they're taking the penalties.
I mean, I don't know what you're watching if you're telling me that Bouchard is a disaster on the blue line in the playoffs. You want to talk about him being lackadaisical in the regular season? Okay,
yes,
I'll agree to that. I'll definitely agree to that. But
in the postseason, different story.
Different story, man.
Yeah.
Switch.
Bouchard has been absolutely outstanding, and that's one reason why I say if Florida wins, it's because they have to work over the Edmonton D. You got to work them down low.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. If Florida can keep them pinned in their own zone, and that goes for any team, really. I mean, it's if you can keep them in their own zone, and you could force their D to start, really get moving and everything, and really wear down someone like Ekholm, who's obviously just recently come back, then yeah, they can win the series. But I think the biggest thing is if Bobrovsky doesn't implode, if Bobrovsky doesn't have one of his spells where he goes into his inconsistencies and he starts getting into his own feels in his own head, that he is susceptible to that, and he has been throughout his entire career.
Yeah, Phil, speaking of Bouchard, do you remember where he was drafted?
Yeah, he was in Dallas, and it was right after fucking Kravtsov.
One pick after Kravtsov, yeah.
We could have taken Evan Bouchard. We wouldn't have had to take Keandre Miller. Oh man, that would have been. Woo.
Or Noah Dobson.
Or Noah Dobson.
All right, so I'll admit the 2 guys I wanted at that pick at 8 were Dobson and Wahlstrom. And
likewise,
I thought Wahlstrom was going to be a great goal scorer. I thought that was going to be a 30-plus goal scorer right there, and the Rangers need goal scorers. But Dobson was right at the top of my list. But we could have taken Bouchard and not taken Kravtsov, and then still had 2 other picks to get another defenseman not named Nils Lundqvist and Keandre Miller. Like, oh man.
Oh yeah, the smartest guy in the room. And oh my God.
Gordy Clark, man.
All right, boys. Here's the big one, and everybody watching, we don't have 3 predictions. We actually have 4 because Anthony gave his predictions for us in this show. So let's start with our guest, Mr. Statboy Steven. Who is your Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and who is winning the Stanley Cup? And as we learned from last year, they don't have to be on the same team.
I think Edmonton's going to win the Cup. I believe Edmonton is not going to go through. They're not going to allow this to happen again. And Conn Smythe is going to be McDavid. Even if he's not the best player in the final, he's going to get the Conn Smythe the same way Crosby got the Conn Smythe in 2015 and 2016.
How many games for Edmonton?
That's a tough one. 7.
All right. So there we go. And Philk, do you have yours yet, or you want me to?
Yeah, I'm going Oilers in 7. I'm going. You spelled Connor wrong.
Oh, that's my bad. I was doing it too fast.
Yeah,
there we go.
Edmonton in 7. I'm going McDavid for the Conn Smythe as well. I think even if the Oilers lose, I think he's getting it. I just think he's going to have another series where.
Can you imagine, Phil? Can you imagine winning back-to-back Conn Smythes without a Stanley Cup?
That would be the first time in history. I think
that would be the first.
Yeah, that's the first time that would
ever happen, that a player wins 2 Conn Smythes without winning a cup.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this way. I think Florida is debatably, arguably better than they were last year with guys like Marchand and Jones. I do think that you can definitely make the argument that Montour is a better defenseman than Jones because, both have defensive deficiencies, but Montour puts up, he could put up 60, 70 points in a season. Like, I'd rather take that guy than take the guy that puts up 30 to 40, like a Keandre Miller, and still has defensive deficiencies. I just think, and then Marchand is obviously a better player than like a Stenlund or Lomberg, etc. But Stenberg and Stenlund and Lomberg and those guys played Florida's identity, their game to a T. And those guys wore down defenses. It's like, if anybody's a football fan here, anybody's a Giants fan or watched the Giants back then, remember when the Giants had Earth, Wind, and Fire, Bradshaw, Jacobs, and Ware, and Derek Ward? They went out and they were 3 change of pace type players. And Jacobs would come in and he would wear down the front 7 of the other team of their defense. Yeah. And then you would have Ward and Bradshaw that would come in and just slice through them afterwards. And that's why they were so successful with that trio, because each one had a role to help wear down the other team's players. And that's what guys like Stenlund and Lomberg did. And you could talk about Marchand replacing Tarasenko. Yeah, fine, fair. But
I think that's a massive upgrade.
Yeah, it is a massive upgrade. I do agree there. But when you lose the other guys that help you play the game, that help open things up for the other guys to be able to come in and feast on those players afterwards, you're going to understand at that point that it's a bigger loss than you think. And that's what a lot of these people who are picking Florida are not realizing. And the other thing is, you had a cakewalk to get to the finals. They've had the easiest road I've seen of any team to get to the finals in a very, very long time. I take Watson over Schmidt any day of the week.
Yeah, my biggest concern with Florida is that Reinhart and Tkachuk aren't fully healthy, and can they really play the game that Florida wants them to play?
Yeah, Tkachuk is definitely not healthy.
No,
he's still messed up from that injury at the Four Nations.
Yeah, and although I do have to say, I'm still not exactly sold.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's no. I take Brandon Montour over Seth Jones. Seth Jones, I think everybody has his memory of him in Columbus. It's not the same thing.
I think
your entire team struggled against Edmonton for 3.5 games, dude.
Yeah,
saying that Jones is better than Montour is just, oh my God, stop.
Well, by the way, we do appreciate the comment.
Jones was an albatross, and that's why they had to retain on him to move him.
Yeah.
Just to get Anthony's out of the way, he's the one. Oh, sorry. I guess if I'm going to preface that, maybe I should say this first. I'm picking Oilers in 6, guys. I think if this goes back to Edmonton with a chance for them to win the series, they're not letting it go 7. And as Evan's saying right here with Florida,
Connor Murphy didn't struggle in Chicago. Why did Seth Jones struggle?
But I think it's a slam dunk for McDavid to win the Conn Smythe because he's just playing such aggressive and impressive two-way hockey. It's that simple with him. Anthony is actually going to take the Panthers. He's the only one taking the Panthers. He's got Sam Bennett win the Conn Smythe. He's a guy we haven't talked much about in this video, guys, and he's Florida's leader in goals.
One goal and 4 points against the Panthers, against the Oilers in 7 games last year. That speed game is going to take effect against him. He doesn't have the wheels to keep up with those guys.
It's the matchup with Edmonton doesn't favor Sam Bennett.
I think it's the speed and it's a renewed sense of defense. The Oilers didn't want to play defense last year. They didn't want to play that type of game. Now you've got the two of the 3 best players in the world understanding that they have to play defense to win. And they've said it in interviews. Literally verbatim said it in interviews. That's scary.
Yeah.
And you know what they're saying right now? They're saying right up and now.
Yeah, who was on their 3rd pair last year in the final? Do you remember? For Edmonton?
It wasn't Jake Wallman, I can tell you that.
It wasn't Jake Wallman, and it wasn't who's the other guy? It wasn't John Klingberg either.
Yeah, John
'Cause they're-
Klingberg is
they're
definitely an
both
upgrade
new.
for them too. There,
I'll
No.
see if I can find that one quick, guys.
I think you know what? I'll tell you right now. You can say that Florida's upgraded, yes, but Edmonton is upgraded more than Florida's upgraded.
Yes. Was Cece still on that team? Did Cece play?
Broberg was on that team. CCS was on that team, and
So
CC was not good for them.
So
Sorry.
Broberg
Yeah, CC and Broberg were their pairing, and Brett Kulak.
So they replaced CC and Broberg with Wallman and Klingberg. That's a huge upgrade.
This is it for me right here. Florida's a better team than last year, but they didn't change anything about their playing style, while Edmonton revamped everything, and their guys are bought in.
It's almost reminiscent
that he was in Edmonton in St. Louis.
Yeah, it's almost reminiscent of what Pittsburgh did in 2009, getting Guerin, and even Guerin at that late in his career, he was still somebody that could really help out.
Miroslav Satan. The big trade for them was Whitney for Kunitz.
Yeah.
Yes, Holloway played well for the Blues, but he wasn't the same player in Edmonton. That's the point.
I mean, if we're going to talk about players being good on other teams, we need to throw a mention in there for Mikkola, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes players play better on other teams. It happens. It happened for the Rangers with Stralman.
Well, no, Mikkola played really good for the Rangers. It's just salary reasons they couldn't keep him.
Yeah, but Phil, he wasn't playing like this. He wasn't playing this way for us.
I would say he was playing close to it. He filled in great for Ryan Lindgren. He was great for him. He looked better. He looked better with Fox than anyone who they've put in his entire tenure with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand how they didn't see that.
I don't know. It feels. We talk about Stralman getting away. I think Mikkola is the one that got away in recent years. That would have solidified our defense so much.
Yes, and that's the point. They bought in. This wasn't the approach last year. I tell you right now, you go back and you ask anybody in the Detroit organization about Steve Yzerman before and after Scotty Bowman. Talk to me about that. And then talk to me how important that mentality change was. And then you'll see why Detroit won in 97. Why they finally got over the hump against Colorado. Yes, Shanahan helped. That Primo Coffee Shanahan deal, that helped big time. But Steve Yzerman finally buying into Scotty Bowman and going from an offense-first player to a guy who understood that he was going to have to check two of the best centers in the world in Peter Forsberg and Joe Sakic to get to where they needed to get to. That was the issue. That was the big thing.
Yeah,
if that never happens, Detroit never wins a cup.
Yeah, and I want to quickly respond to why should Florida change their style if it works? They don't have to, but it's a lot harder to stay at the top than to get to the top because everyone is focusing on you. Everyone's trying to figure out a way to beat you, right? That's why repeat Stanley Cup winners are so rare. And in other sports too, right? The Florida Panthers don't have to change. And they might win another cup. They might win back-to-back cups like Tampa did. But the thing is, Edmonton has changed. And Edmonton's improvement year over year has been bigger than Florida's. And with how close the final was a year ago, going 7 games.
And by the way, just mention what Christy's saying right there. In that span that you're listing right there, Colorado was able to snag 2 cups. Jersey grabbed one. Detroit grabbed 3. Dallas getting 1.
Dallas got 1.
Yep.
But the thing is, Dallas in 99 was an absolute unit. They were one of the most well-balanced teams I've ever seen. You had your 1-2 punch with Modano and Nieuwendyk. And then on the wings, you had Verbeek, Hogue, Hull, Yari Lettinen, who's probably the best defensive winger, one of the best defensive players ever.
The only winger
Selkies as a wing.
The only winger to ever win a Selkie, if I remember correctly.
No,
or the only
not,
one.
But he's
the only one to win multiple.
As a winger. Yeah.
And who's this?
I think
Selkie.
Yari Lettinen. because Dirk Graham, although he's classified, I think, as a center, he has played wing a lot. And Troy Murray won as a wing. He won in 86, and he was the first to score 90 points. He had a 99-point season winning a Selke. So he was Dennis Savard's winger.
But yeah, Lehtinen winning 3 is ridiculous.
Nuts.
As a winger.
Nuts.
It's crazy.
Nuts.
Crazy stuff.
And Hossa couldn't win 1, and Hossa is one of the best defensive players of the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's insane even because they're going to give it to a center first.
Yes,
that's part of the problem.
That's what I was just going to say. The award is so slanted to centers. It's like Defensive Player of the Year in NBA. The award is slanted towards centers. But Michael Jordan, as a shooting guard, won in 1988 while scoring almost 36 points per game. It's one of the crazy seasons in NBA history. The award, those awards are just given to certain positions, and center, because of the inherent amount of defensive responsibility, it's always given to centers. That shows you how good Lehtinen was to win it, not just once as a winger, but 3 friggin' times.
Yeah.
Also, Zubov was on that team.
Oh, yeah.
Zubov, Hall of Famer. Their defense.
They got him for Kevin Hatcher.
Really good. You had Darian Hatcher.
Yep.
Darian Hatcher and Richard Mapachuk were their first pairing. And then their second pairing was Daryl Sador and Sergei Zubov. And Zubov was their power play guy.
And also, Hatcher was the first American-born captain to win the Stanley Cup.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people are going to forget because you're going to think it was Madonna, but he wasn't.
Nope.
And Chris Draper also, by the way, was a perfect Detroit Red Wing for all that.
Yeah, he was a very good defensive center. I mean, I get why some people are talking about, if I tell you right now, if Pavel Datsyuk was a couple of years older, he could have won the Selke that year because he was incredible. I'm pretty sure if takeaways were recorded back then, he would have been the league leader at that time.
I mean, Chris Draper, just it was the 2004 season. He was on pace for a 35-goal season. He had 24 and 67. Or I said 35, maybe a 30-goal season.
Speaking of Selkies, when are they announcing the awards?
That'll probably be after the finals. Usually it's like afterwards, and then actually, no, they'll announce it at the award ceremony.
The big 5 they announced at the award ceremony. The other ones they announced during the Stanley Cup final, I think.
Oh, like general manager of the year and stuff.
Yeah,
like
the Jack Adams and Masterton.
They've been doing like the awards before the Stanley Cup, like.
But the big 5, the Vezina, the Hart, the Norris, and a couple of others they do during the ceremony. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I think Carter is winning the Adams. I just, that point improvement is just going to be.
Last year he could have. He was actually.
Is your sarcasm level ever like below an 8.5?
I would argue Laviolette should have won it last year. With like, if you look at the Rangers, if you look at the 2 seasons that bookend that first Laviolette season, you have.
I think he should have won it in 2024 as well. I do, and not just because of a homer thing, but like really, like he took a team that was pretty flawed, and he got career years out of guys like Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. He had an injured Adam Fox, and
injured Shesterkin,
and Shesterkin wasn't even at his best.
No,
he wasn't even close to his best, and Igor Shesterkin had to take a month-long mental reset where Jonathan Quick was the de facto starter, and they still won a President's Trophy.
Also, they were without their second-line center the entire season.
I do think we talked about this all the time, guys. There needs to be a defensive defenseman award.
Yeah, the Rod Langley.
No. No, there needs to be an offensive defenseman award, and the Norris needs to be given to the best defenseman.
Yeah, but again, I think you're
yeah,
right on both
just-
of those. You
yeah,
could do.
I think you could do
total
3 of them.
defenseman, and you could also do offensive, the Bobby Orr Award, and the Rod Langway Award.
Yeah, and then just leave the Norris as the best all-around player. Or if you want to just give a scoring trophy out for a defenseman, then make it the Bobby Orr Award.
Yeah, the Bobby Orr Award should go to the defenseman. It should go to the defenseman with the most points. That should
the
be
last defenseman that actually won it was Rod Langway, and he's the only guy in NHL history in the modern era to win the Norris while scoring under 40 points. And I'm talking about in a full. Actually, Coffey won it in '95, and he had over 40 points in a shortened season. So it's crazy to think how guys like Slavin are never going to get that unless there's an award for it.
Yeah, but there should be a separate award like the Ard Ross that is simply given to the defenseman with the most points in the season.
Absolutely.
Right? And then you keep the Norris for who puts up the best defensive performance. With all the metrics that are out there, all these reporters should know better.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
Because they all bring it up in their articles, but when it's time to vote, it's like, oh, Makar.
Oh, yeah, Carlson. or Carlson. Yeah, Carlson getting 100 points, minus 23 on one of the worst teams in the league. Sorry, no, you're not the best defenseman.
Yeah, I don't care that he scored 100 points. There's actually a predecessor for a defenseman scoring 100 points and not winning a Norris. It's called Al McInnes, 1990-1991.
And
Ray Bork won it over him.
And don't look further than the year before when Roman Josi basically had 100 points and didn't get it. They gave it to Makar.
And I think
not only that, but Roman Josi led his team in scoring, I think by like 10 or 12 points.
Yeah.
While Cale Makar had, I think, 4 other players in the top 20 in scoring.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And the year that Carlson won, it should have been Adam Fox. Adam Fox was better that year than the year he won the Norris.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, 2023, he was great. He was great up until that knee injury with Aho, that piece of shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just reading this now, but apparently Rope Hintz confirmed that the slash by Darnell Nurse fractures his foot.
Yeah, there should have been suspension for that. I don't like that play at all.
Evan Bouchard giving him a nice little love tap right after that didn't help.
Yeah, I don't like that play. I don't.
By the way, I'm going to close out the poll right now, guys. 43% of you think Florida in 6 or 7. 36% think Edmonton in 6 or 7, and Edmonton in 4 or 5 at 21%. Nobody for Florida, 4 or 5. So, yeah.
I don't think this final is going to go 4 or 5 anyway.
No, this is going 7. Either way, it's going 7.
I was gonna joke and say it might go into like double overtime at Game 7. Like that's how good these teams are. Oh yeah, I was laughing at that one too.
Yeah, I don't think David Wood has ever met a chance to not be sarcastic about something.
Yeah, we love you, David.
I think his sarcasm meter is always at like a 9 or more.
But
by the way, only one Stanley Cup Finals Game 7 has ever gone to double overtime. Can anybody name the 2 teams and who had the game winner?
Wait, a Stanley Cup Final winning game or a Game 7?
Game 7. Double overtime.
It wasn't 2014.
It's a really old one, guys.
Oh, I don't know, 1950.
Holy shit, Steve.
What? What? I'm just throwing out
1950, the Detroit Red Wings over the New York Rangers. And the goal scorer was Pete Babando.
Okay, I just threw out a random year. I like whatever. That's the best. Oh my god, that's.
If you would have gotten Pete the Bando, that would have been even better. But yeah,
I would have walked off.
When you said it was a long time ago, I'm like, what, 1950? I was just naming a year I knew the Rangers were in it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, 1950.
1950,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
It would be the Rangers.
I'm gonna buy a lottery ticket when we wrap this up. It's a good day. It's a good day today.
Jeremy's right about this one. If they did an award for most assists in a season,
the Wayne Gretzky Award.
You would call that the Wayne Gretzky Award?
Okay, I have a caveat.
How would you not? His 1,963 points is still the most all time if you remove his goals.
Well,
I have
one
caveat if we do introduce that as a trophy, that it cannot go to the player that's already winning the Art Ross.
Okay.
I don't know how you do that. Because
what if
it's Nikita Kucherov 2024?
Then you give it to the guy with the second most assists.
Well, him and McDavid tied with the same amount of assists, 100.
Oh, then you give one each.
I can't get on board with that. I'm sorry.
But yeah, they need to have also they need to get rid of this Mark Messier Leadership Award. Like, what a nonsense award that is.
Yeah, I don't know about that award. I'm not really too high on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was as David's saying right here, fourth show we pumped out this week, and we were trying to get Anthony on because we always like to have the hockey Triforce. So by the way, Stephen, thanks for coming out of the bullpen today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. We still got more talking we're gonna do right now. We'll go another 15 minutes, which we all know what that means.
Another 15
I'll
minutes.
free up my evening, Mark.
I'm taking my wife out to dinner today because I'm not going to see her for a couple of days. I'm going away on a golf trip. So,
look at you, golf trip.
Yeah, it's like the Wantagh.
What are you going to shoot in 96?
Actually, we do best ball, but I might try to play a quick 18. 96 actually isn't bad on this course. 96 is.
I'm throwing around random numbers.
Are you sure you're going to get it in?
Well, that's a good question because hopefully there's going to be rain. There's not going to be any rain. It happened one time when we went there. It just rained the entire time.
Just make sure you wash your balls.
It's automatically not the Experience Trophy.
Well, yeah, no, but look, the Ranger fans are going to hate me for saying this, but it's the Mark Messier Eagle Award. It's just an award that he gets to hand out to whoever he thinks earns it. It's ridiculous. It's a non thing.
Honestly, I feel like it's like a second, like King Clancy.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need another one like that?
Yeah, but I don't have an issue with another trophy. But at least have like a proper voting system in place. Not have like the one guy that the trophy was named after decide who wins it.
Yeah, because what happens with Mark Messier gets too old that he can't do it anymore?
Yeah, he's gonna give it to himself.
Well, they renamed the Pearson to the Ted Lindsay. I mean,
it's funny, Phil. I forgot all about that until you just said it. I went, oh yeah, the Lester B. Pearson Award is now the Ted Lindsay Award. But this is one thing I like about the NHL. At least they do stuff like this, and they're not afraid to like make the Maurice Richard Trophy as they did. The first ever guy to win it was Keith Tkachuk, if I recall correctly.
What?
The Richard? No,
Richard.
The Rocket Richard Trophy was Solani in '99.
Okay. All right, I will always remember Tkachuk. I was trying. That's why I was like, if I recall.
It went Solani in '99, Burry the next 2 years with 58 and 59. 2002 was Iginla. 2003 was Hayduk. 2004 was a three-way split between Iginla, Kovalchuk, and Nash. 2006 was fuck you, Jonathan Cheechoo.
Oh, Jonathan Cheechoo.
Yeah, I hated that year because Yager lost out on 2 different trophies on like the last game of the season. Bullshit. Yeah. And then 2007 was Lecavalier. 2008 was Ovechkin's crazy 65-goal year. 2009 was Ovechkin. 2010 was Crosby and Stamkos. 11 was Perry. That was the year that he won the Richard and the Hart. He almost scored 100 points. 12 was Stamkos with 60. 13 was Ovechkin, where he had that crazy comeback with like the second half of the season and won both the Richard and the Hart rather. 14 was wow, that's a tough 14.
14. All right. Now you got me thinking about it.
14.
Because, by the way, everybody, Phil was doing this by memory.
14 wasn't Crosby. He won the roster.
It's so obvious, Phil.
2014?
Ovechkin won like 3 or 4.
Oh, yeah, Ovechkin again. Yeah, that's right. 2014 and 2015 were Ovechkin. Crosby was 16, or was he 17? I think he was 17. Actually 17. Yeah.
17.
Ovechkin was 16 again. Crosby was 17. 18 was that Ovechkin again? Yeah, Ovechkin again. 19 was Ovechkin again. And then 20 was a split between Ovechkin, Matthews, and I think Pasternak.
Pasternak at 48.
Oh, only Ovechkin and Pasternak, not Matthews.
Oh, I thought Matthews was very close, though. He was right there, I think. Because that was Mika Zibanejad's crazy year where he led the league in goals per game. 21 was Matthews. 22 was Matthews. 23 was McDavid. 24 was Matthews. And then this year was who the fuck was it this year? Draisaitl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ovechkin won 7 in 8 years.
Which is nuts. The only other streak we've seen like that is Bossy. Or Gretzky, too, sorry.
Yeah.
You want to just because I was thinking about Ovechkin in the lockout shortened season of 2013, and I can't help but think about this one. In the lockout shortened season of 19...
No, it wasn't the year he broke his leg. It was the year that Bergeron did that dirty reverse hit and nailed him right in the head and gave him the concussion.
He had like 42 goals in 57 games that year, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 41.
If you guys remember in the strike shortened season of 95, the lockout shortened season, let me correct that.
Yeah.
Only 2 players were able to score 30 goals that season. Do you remember who they were?
Peter Bondra and Owen Nolan.
Okay, now I have to fix it. I thought it was Yager and Ray Shepard.
Oh, no, 3. So hold on.
Bondra, I think, did it at the very end, right?
I think Owen Nolan did it that year. There were more than 2.
Oh, okay. See, that's why I had to correct myself.
Bondra led with 34. He won the goal scoring title that year. Yager won the Ross over Lindros because Lindros had 29 and Yager had 32. Owen Nolan, I think, had 30 that year as well.
All right. So
yeah, he had 30 goals in 46 games, Owen Nolan.
Yeah.
And then I think you're right about Ray Shepard.
Yeah.
My question here about the Art Ross, right? And I think Lindros should have won it that year.
I think he should too because he played less games.
Exactly. The tiebreaker shouldn't be who got more goals. The tiebreaker should be who played fewer games to get to the same amount of points.
Shepard had 30 goals in only 43 games.
By the way, just to mention the forgotten guy of that season, Alexei Zhamnov had 30 in 48.
Yeah, wow. That's another one that I forgot about. Nolan had 30 in 46. Bondra led the entire NHL with 34. And that was the only time he ever won the goal scoring title, despite having multiple other 50-goal seasons.
And then Ray Shepard
won another goal scoring title in 98. I think he
Alexei Zhamnov is a player I did not expect to hear today.
Well, no, and you want to know why he won that title? Why he hit 30 that year? Because he had a 5-goal game against the Kings.
Yeah. Wow. How many awards has Justin Huberdeau won?
Well, Justin Huberdeau won a Calder. If we're talking about that Justin Huberdeau.
Yes. Actually, guys, this is an interesting one. I still like the old names, but what do you think if the NHL renamed the Calder Trophy to the Solani Trophy?
I think if they're going to change names, they should change the names of the divisions.
Okay.
To what?
I don't think changing names of like trophies make sense. Just keep it the way it is.
I think with Solani, I like that one because that's a record right there. And not only that, but Solani is a pioneer for Finnish players. Not the pioneer, because you could talk about Jari Kurri, obviously, Reijo Ruotsalainen, Matty Hagman, others like that have come before Teemu Solani. But Teemu Solani was like, if Finland wasn't a hockey hotbed before him, it definitely became one after him.
It already was,
obviously.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that when you have that type of player that comes along and really opened the door for a lot more Finnish NHLers.
Yeah, like if we're talking about renaming trophies, Solani makes sense for the Calder.
Yes.
Ovechkin, obviously, for the Rocket Richard. That should be a no-brainer, right?
But I don't want to rename anything away from Maurice the Rocket Richard. It's honor your history.
But why are we changing things away from Calder then?
I agree with you on that.
Like if we are going, like, hypothetically, right? If we are going to this whole wave of new names for all the trophies, what would you come up with? Like, what would the Vezina be named instead of
the
Vezina?
Dominic Hasek for me.
The Dominic Hasek. There, we agree on that one.
You got some people that would say the Patrick Waugh Award.
Yeah.
Or the Marty. So you have Devils fans saying the Marty Brodeur Award, but I mean.
Yeah, but
he's the Brett Favre of the NHL.
We could actually implement a trophy for the goalies who face the fewest shots every season, and he can win that trophy. And we name it to Brodeur.
Yeah, we can name that one the Brodeur.
The Norris would be the Bobby Orr, I assume. Like,
or
But we're in favor of the Norris Trophy being split.
Okay. So
you have the Norris for the overall, Bobby Orr for the offensive.
Okay.
And
so the Bobby Orr for the best offensive defenseman and the Lindros for the best defensive defenseman.
The Lindros?
Lidstrom.
Oh, I was about to say.
Lidstrom. Sorry.
Where did he go with this?
Not Lindros.
Defense would have been freaking hilarious, man.
No, we talked about Lindros before for a quick second, so we're still stuck in my head. No, Lidstrom.
Well, here's one for you. Todd Peterson saying the Doug Harvey Award.
Doug Harvey. Oh, yeah. I mean, Doug Harvey was Bobby Orr before Bobby Orr.
And, David, when we know this much, the wires get crossed every now and again.
So if you look at the evolution of it and like the timeline chronologically, I mean, you had Eddie Shore, and this was like he was there like right when like the forward pass came into play and everything like that. The Patrick Nemeth Award. Oh man! Oh my God, that's terrible.
The Patrick Nemeth Award should go to a player that's signed solely to mentor a young kid from the same country.
Oh God, no! Please no.
The Patrick Nemeth Award should go solely to the guy that should be fired into the sun.
Yeah, out of a cannon. But you have Eddie Shore, who was the guy, and he won multiple MVPs back then as a defenseman. Something we've seen twice since. And then you had Doug Harvey, who was obviously incredible, and his string of Norris trophies nobody thought would be broken. And then Bobby Orr comes along, does that, revolutionizes hockey as we know, because we would have none of these puck movers that roam around the way that they do if it wasn't for Bobby Orr. And then Nick Lidstrom has one of the best Norris runs, albeit in I would say a weaker class, because I think the greatest class of defensemen we've ever seen was that 80s into the 90s spillover.
Yep.
Where you had Leach, you had Bork, you had Chelios, you had McInnes, You had Suter. You had Larry
Coffey.
Murphy, Scott Stevens, Paul Coffey. I mean, we're talking about the greatest of the great of all time. And Lidstrom didn't win his first until all of those guys were either gone or well out of their prime. Like Ray Bork, he won it in Ray Bork's last season. You could have argued that Ray Bork could have won it that year in 2001. So
I like this one. New York Sewer Kids got one. What if you did an offensive rookie and a defensive rookie of the year?
Yeah, I would actually be okay with that, and then you include the goalies in the defensive rookie of the year, I assume.
Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah, so goalies and defensemen, and then offensemen. Yeah,
but I mean, and this is a great one. Roman L saying right here, Carlson, defenseman with the most points, still somehow a minus.
Yeah, but what after that though? Serge Savard, maybe.
Could we have a trophy? Could we have a trophy for the defenseman that's out of position the most? Or we name it the Jacob Trouba?
Think about this one first.
Jacob Trouba or the Andre Miller could do that.
You know, the Masterton, which is given to the player who, you know, like the Perseverance Award. If you want to talk about perseverance, give it to Rich Peverley, who wanted to go back on the ice after suffering a heart attack on the bench.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean,
he was legally dead. Oh, no,
he was. I mean, when your heart stops, you could make the argument that you're technically dead. Yeah.
He was like Barney on The Simpsons. Oh, my heart stopped. Oh, there it goes.
But yeah, but changing names for trophies it's a bit of a slippery slope, because where do you draw the line with which trophies you're going to rename and which you don't? But
Steven, the joke out of this was I broke his water bottle in pregame warmups.
Okay.
I went bar down on a shot and popped it out, and Dave looks at me and goes, "Dude, you just broke my water bottle." Sorry, man.
Oh, you know what? We can have actually a Mark Williams award for the player in the NHL whose name is pronounced incorrectly the most in the season.
See, I want to say, and I want to thank you for naming it after me, but I mean, Sam, I don't know. Sam actually always got it right. Trying to think of what guy always mispronounces everything. I can tell you what, Anthony always gets Stefan Nason's name wrong because he always calls him Nosen.
Stefan Nason.
Yeah, but I've had too many of them, so I guess just Laviolette. I think for a while I kept on saying.
Yeah, you couldn't pronounce Laviolette for like the longest time.
Yeah, because
it was actually comical to try to listen to you pronounce that.
Or the couple times where I had to sound it out and then I got it right. All right. So
it's kind of like that Friends episode where Phoebe is teaching Joey French. La V O Let La Violette. I
don't know if the Rangers do this move for Sean Monahan.
No, it came from like a fan. It was some stupid fan piece.
Yeah, okay.
If you trade Keandre Miller, it only makes sense if you trade him for a defenseman that's a little bigger, a little more rugged, a little more reliable on the blue line. Maybe a little older with less upside, kind of like they did with Del Zotto for Klein 10 years ago or 12 years ago. I'm not comparing Del Zotto to Keandre Miller, but that kind of trade where you sacrifice a little bit of upside for a more consistent performance on your blue line.
By the way, I got to disappoint somebody right now.
I actually have a target that's probably a little too old. And if he was a left shot defenseman, I would absolutely do it just because I think he could help put them in the right direction. And I think it would go along with that culture changing mentality that they need. But Colton Parayko.
Yeah.
Yeah, Parayko.
Parayko would be. And St. Louis wouldn't do it. I don't think. I think they love him too much. But if you could get, actually, you could technically trade him because you do need right side depth behind Adam Fox. You need a guy that can come in and play on the right side and play
on your second
22 minutes behind Fox. So I mean, because honestly, I would rather Braden Schneider on my third pair.
Yeah.
Not my second pairing. I think although they played as a good second pairing in 23-24, I don't think Schneider is cut out for top 4 minutes.
Which would prove John Davidson wrong, since he's the guy that wanted to trade up to get him. You saw it in the behind the scenes thing. Brandon Schneider was the guy that's going to win you Stanley Cup.
So embarrassing. If you watch the longer clip of that pick, they actually posted like a 4 or 5 minute video of the Schneider pick, where Davidson was talking about we need to get a guy like Hedman because Tampa had just won a cup with Hedman as their defenseman. That's why they went with Schneider, because Schneider reminded Davidson of Hedman.
How the hell does Braden Schneider remind you of Victor Hedman?
I know. Look,
like, all right, I'll say this right now. I watched a lot of tape on Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman was doing things like little backhand toe drags through his legs behind his back against guys his age. When was Braden Schneider ever doing anything close to that? Braden Schneider, I watched a ton of tape on him in his draft year. And one of the biggest things, and I think it was either Scouting or Elite Prospects, can't remember which one I was watching on it. One of the things that they were saying with it, they had major concerns that Braden Schneider would never translate offensively at the NHL level because of his inability, one, to walk the line, and two, be able to make moves to beat forecheckers and defenders at the line. And they were right about that.
Yeah, look, and the thing with Schneider is I think at this point, if you're going to play Schneider on your third pair, trade him for something more valuable than a third pair defenseman.
Yeah.
Because he has more. Schneider is one of those players that has more value in a trade than he has on the ice for you.
Oh.
There's way too many guys like that on the Rangers right now.
Exactly.
Igor Chinakhov, Connor Zary, Jake Neighbors, Ridley Grieg, Maverick Bork, all to take Braden Schneider, and then Peterka at 34.
And not for nothing, before him was Dawson Mercer, who I think is a guy the Rangers would have craved easily and fit in. He would have fit in well on Broadway.
They actually traded up to get ahead of the Devils to get Schneider.
Yeah.
Because the Devils then went with Mukhamadullin.
But
by the way, guys,
Mukhamadullin just got like a 1-year deal. He's basically on his last ditch deal. If he doesn't do anything, he's gone.
But if we're talking about trades this summer, there was some smoke around the deadline around Peterka. If Peterka is indeed available, then Drury should definitely go after a guy like that. And
they had talks with them.
Yeah. And if you want to throw in a guy like Byram, who they struggle to re-sign in Buffalo, I could totally see a deal like Lafreniere and Schneider for Peterka and Byram, where you even it out with picks or prospects. That is a what were we talking about earlier? Like a mindset change, mindset changing trade. Where, and I still would trade Miller in another deal for a guy that's just more consistent on your
trade me Miller for power, please.
Because
Buffalo wouldn't do that.
Keandre Miller is 25 years old now. We need to stop talking about upside and about potential when a guy is 25.
Yeah. He might figure it out, but it's not going to be as near Granger.
He's not 21 years old anymore. The guy's 25. He's pretty much what he's going to be right now.
By the way, I do have to. First, let me just say this, David. I need to disappoint you for a second. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. So I actually got the name right. But you look at where were we? Keandre Miller. I think also one thing that affects that is the rules about hitting. They don't introduce hitting early enough, so you've got a guy that's not used to physical play to begin with. And then you're changing his position where it's one of those that you have to be physical. Like, I mean, it's hard to develop that way.
But Mark, Keandre Miller has played defense longer now than he played offense.
I know. And I'm with you.
I just think at some point, like you have to step back and just I'm not trying to be that guy and be like, oh well, I play and I know everything. Like that's not what I'm doing. But just from watching him myself and like picking apart, because especially with defense, that's what I do. I just it's like when you know what you're supposed to do and you actually like physically do it. There's just a different element to watching it. I can't explain it. But
and mentally, this might be a bit of a weird comparison, but he reminds me a little bit of Anisimov, who would have like 2 or 3 games where he played like a fucking superstar,
yeah,
and then he would regress and play like very inconsistent for the next 10.
yeah.
I know it's a forward versus a defenseman, so it's not a
No,
perfect
you're right.
comparison.
It's still the mindset.
Right.
You're right.
And that's part of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Part of what I was getting at is the fact that like it's execution with him, but it's all up here. And I don't think that he's ever going to be able to figure that out. I think that if he can somehow, it's somewhere away from a place like New York, where, like at least for the Rangers and the city, where like things are more quiet.
Yeah, no distractions.
I just think the focus is not there for him. There are too many games where he looks amazing. Like when he's on, there are a few things that I could point out right away about him. He's aggressive. He steps up and controls the gaps very well when he's on. Like when he's on, like I'm not trying to compare him to Lidstrom, but when he's on, he reminds me of Lidstrom of how he can just step up and use his lankiness and the range to really control the gap and make that zone entry tough for forwards. Like you've seen in the playoffs. Remember 2022 when he was having that great playoff run and he was like throwing guys like Kucherov around? And then like the next year, he's like, what the hell happened to him? It's just, I don't think he figures that out. I don't think he does. I would move on from him, especially if he wants that big deal. I would move on from him because I would be very wary about giving him like a 7x7 or even like a 6.5 or a 6x7 because
that's actually a really good point that you highlighted there. Was it you, Mark, who highlighted that last comment? Yeah, because you know who also played forward until he was 15 years old? Zach Jones.
Brent Burns was drafted in the first round as a center.
Yeah, but we never talk about Zach Jones being limited by the fact that he hasn't played defenseman his entire life, right? Tarmo Reunanen was a goalie until he was 12. This happens all the time in when players are like that age. They play different positions. How many players do we see move? I know it's different, but move from center to wing when they get to a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Miller moved from offense to defense, but that was a decade ago. When he was in college, he was already a defenseman. We drafted him as a defenseman. He played for the NTDP as a defenseman.
And if we're still going to be blaming him, him for not growing, or giving him credit on that, then you got to fire all the development guys, which they have to do anyway.
This is not a guy like Brent Burns. This is not a guy like Brent Burns who was drafted as a forward and then moved to defense while he was in the NHL. That's not what's happening here. Keandre Miller is a defenseman. Period.
Yeah, it's no more excuse of him playing a forward. You're still making the same mistakes in year 5 that you made in year 1, and you've been playing defense for like 8 years now. Like, I'm sorry, but that's what you are.
And he'll have his 5th defensive coach now.
I'm just going to bring this up just for fun. Not that it's really an apples to oranges type thing, but Sergei Fedorov went from center to defense for a bit. Like, and I hate it's not fair to compare anybody to Sergei Fedorov because he might be one of the most just complete players the game has ever seen.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was able to play defense as well as he was for as long as he did just goes to show you like how good of a player he was.
Yeah. And if it was easier to transition from forward to defense, we would see it more often.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the fact that all we can come up with is Bufflin, Burns, and now Fedorov, that tells you all you need to know.
Steven, Mika Zibanejad did it for a few shifts this year, so. By the way, they should remake that Sergei Fedorov Nike commercial with Connor McDavid. But because that's a classic. That's an all-time classic one.
No, you can't do that there though, because he's not. One, we don't know what he's going to be at forward, and two, you can't afford to have that type of player on like your fourth line. Like, remember how many people like bitched about Barclay Goodrow's contract?
Yeah,
like DeAndre Miller would be making even more, and he'd be a question mark there. At least Barclay Goodrow, you knew he was a fourth liner. And DeAndre Miller's even an NHL level forward.
Yeah,
and hands down.
Look, if we're going to talk about this hypothetical with Miller playing forward, where's he going to play? What line is he going to play on?
Fourth line.
I would. Who are we taking off the fourth line? Is it going to be Carrick, Edstrom, or Rempe? Because I
want to highlight that one too. Sorry.
Yeah, like if Miller doesn't back check on defense, how is he going to forecheck on offense? The guy doesn't put any physical shift in ever. It's just not happening. And look, I know he's talented, and I know we always talk about the tools that he has. He has all the tools. He doesn't have the toolbox.
Mm-hmm. That's why I said it's up here. It's all up here. You either have that or you don't.
This is sad to say, then Todd's right about this. Keandre Miller is no Troy Stetcher. Think about that one for a minute.
Troy Stetcher.
I mean, geez.
And this is why I'm saying I would rather have a guy who I can put on my second pair, who's consistently a second pair, than have a guy that is flaky as fuck, where you hope he puts up first pair performances, but they're too few and far in between to really count on.
Oh, Steven, I keep going back just to cite the Dallas game. Lindgren has the puck. He says, "I got it."
The Ottawa game too, Mark.
Yeah, right there.
The Ottawa game in March.
But then he takes the puck, goes around, looks for a breakout pass. One forechecker gets on him. He coughs up the puck. They end up tying the game. That's the stuff that happens with Keandre Miller. The worst decision making possibly.
Just dump the puck.
Yeah.
Just get icing.
We literally told that in like Pee Wee.
Collectively, as a fan base, we have criticized Jacob Trouba for the exact same thing. But when Keandre Miller does it, it's like, oh, but he's still young. Oh, he still has upside. Oh, but he played as a forward until he was 19, which is not true.
No, all the excuses are gone for him.
Get every excuse from the book from this fan base, the same way Igor Shesterkin and Henrik Lundqvist did. Anytime those guys do something wrong, this fan base jumps into white knight for them, and they can never do anything wrong. The goalie can never give up a bad goal. Keandre Miller can never make a bad defensive play.
But on the other hand, with Henrik Lundqvist, he didn't make that many mistakes.
Well,
he didn't. But when he did,
one time that no one can convince me otherwise. The reason the Rangers didn't make the Cup final in 2015 is Henrik Lundqvist and Henrik Lundqvist only.
Yep, absolutely.
He gave up 6 goals in games 1 and 2, but then Ranger fans go, "Oh, but we were shut out in games 5 and 6."
Game three.
But if
65-foot wrist shot in overtime after Boyle ties the game.
Yeah, but if Lundqvist was games 2 and 3 where he gave up 6 each, right?
Yeah, each one.
Because he shut out Tampa in game 1 at the Garden.
Yeah. If he
they got one. They got one. They won 2-1.
No, that's right. It was a 2-1. It was a late goal. That's right. Sorry.
But if he puts up a half decent performance in one of those 2 games, we're not going to game 7, guys. We're not talking about getting shut out in game 7 at home.
Yeah, but Tampa was electric even in like game 6.
Yeah, but Henrik had his number all season that year.
Mark, Henrik Lundqvist was the highest paid goalie in the league.
That's true too.
And you give up 6 goals in back-to-back games? Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Yeah. There's no excuse. Great goalie, well-deserved first ballot Hall of Famer. Great guy. Love him to death. but I blame him for 2015.
And you can get on him for 2012 in the Game 5, the start that they had, even though they erased it. Then they erased that deficit.
Yeah.
And then they left Ryan Carter all alone in front. Good job.
So the 3 games they played against Tampa in 2015, they went 0-3, and he allowed 15 goals in 3 games to them. The Rangers only scored 7 in those games.
And I remember in
5 goals per game.
In the conference final, I remember after 7 games, the goals were tied 21-21. I don't care. Because when it comes down to it, you gave up too many goals in games 2 and 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could have had a 3-1 lead going back home for game 5.
The other series I'll ever lay an ounce of blame on Lundqvist for was Ottawa 2017. He was just not good in that series.
There was one goal that Erik Karlsson scored from
the goal from the goal line, the Alexei Yashin.
Yeah, but that was off the side of his head that he scored.
Doesn't matter, Mark.
Doesn't matter. You can't let that in.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you understand how low of a percentage of a shot that is?
I do know. Yeah,
that's like maybe a 1% shot chance at best.
You have a better chance at putting it in your own net than putting it in your opposition's net from that position.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, actually, not unfortunately. Fortunately for Henrik in that series, he's not even top 3 on the scapegoats because Vigneault and his decision making.
Yeah,
in game
terrible.
2.
Yes,
no, of course, but.
And then Dan Girardi did not have a good series either.
No, and Dan Girardi falling in overtime and giving Kyle Turris another overtime goal after he did it 5 years earlier to them as well. But that overtime goal that Turris scored was not a good shot for Lundqvist to let up. He could have saved that.
Yeah, and for all the blame we can throw around to Vigneault for putting Holden and Stahl together, remember that pairing?
Whoa.
For all the blame we can throw at Vigneault and at the defenseman, ultimately there's still blame to go around towards Lundqvist in that series too. Like it doesn't absolve him of all the blame. And again, like I said, great goalie, well-deserved first ballot Hall of Famer, doesn't get the respect he deserves from other fan bases because you never won a cup. I don't care. Winning a cup doesn't make you a good player. Marcus Kruger is not a better center than Connor McDavid just because he won a cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Antti Niemi is not.
Frank Dilfer is not better than
Dan Marino. Or Dan Marino.
Yeah.
Dan Marino, yeah. I mean, I'm not even going to put Mark Rippon in that same category either. Dan Marino.
Yeah, winning championships is a team effort. It's a team accomplishment.
Does that mean Mike Keene's better than Mike Gardner? Claude Lemieux better than Mike Gardner?
I know Dan Carcillo is better than Ovechkin because he won more cups.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that mean Michael Del Zotto was the best Rangers draft pick since he won a cup, or Michael Roosevelt because they both won cups?
Michael Roosevelt, Michael Del Zotto, Carl Hagelin won 2 cups.
Carl Hagelin.
Better than Rick Nash.
That HBK line in fucking 2016.
Oh, that was electric, man. That line
was the Rangers ACC line with Avery, Cullen, and Callahan, but on steroids.
Yeah. Kessel was robbed of the Conn Smythe.
Kessel was robbed. Kessel and Matt Murray were both robbed. I get Crosby played tough matchups and still was almost a point per game and was great defensively, but I'm sorry, but Kessel was the leader in points, and Matt Murray won a lot of games for them in that playoff run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, just to go with this, but Big Shot Bob, that's what his nickname was. Yes. He was amazing, and he was always that guy that could be that like third tier guy on a lot of teams and just hit the big shot, keep the momentum going. You needed a bucket, you go to him.
Have you seen that FanDuel commercial with Charles Barkley, where he talks to his younger self?
Yeah, GPT, Chuck GPT. Yeah.
No, an older one where he talks to his younger self.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
And they go, "Yeah, looking good, old Chuck. Yeah, you too, young Chuck." And they go, "How many championships am I going to win?" And he goes, "No, I want to be surprised. And then the
Benito
old
was
Chuck
on
goes,
Nashville for that series, Dave.
and then the old Chuck goes, "You're gonna be surprised." That's one of the funniest commercials with a pro athlete, in my opinion.
Yeah, Horry was money, and as a Knicks fan, I hated that guy for a while because, I mean, Ewing and Olajuwon basically canceled each other out, but Robert Horry was just,
Yeah,
he was really good. He hit
and I think Otis Thorpe was on that team too.
What?
Otis Thorpe. I
Otis
think
Thorpe?
they tried
Vernon
trading him to
Maxwell?
Portland, and they didn't. And they got reneged. I forgot why.
Pretty sure Vernon Maxwell was also on that team.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Steve, by the way, one of my favorite athlete commercials is the Priceline commercial about the college tournament, and it's a father and daughter, and they're talking about, oh, should you go? And guys, look this up because I just think this commercial is hilarious.
Yeah.
And they go to the tournament, they go on Priceline, they get the tickets, they go to the tournament, and it's David Robinson, who's just one of the best. He's like, by the way, little girl, hard work and a little bit of dedication can take you anywhere you go. That's great advice from the Admiral, David Robinson. And then it says, but if you don't go, and they're sitting in a restaurant watching the game on TV, and they're talking to somebody, and he just says, I'm telling you, little girl, success is just failure that hasn't happened yet. And that's life advice from Latrell Sprewell.
John Stark, if he had just given the ball to Ewing in Game 6, there would have never been a Game 7.
Yeah, but they wanted to get
a Game 7.
They wanted to get Starks because Starks was hot. They wanted to get him to hit a three-pointer in the series.
Cold in that game. When you start out that way, hand the damn ball over to somebody who is having success.
Right, but
Ewing and Olajuwon couldn't stop each other.
In Game 6, Starks was red hot. The thing is, Rudy Tomjanovich knew what Pat Riley was doing, and he put Olajuwon on John Starks.
Yeah,
So
Olajuwon was one of the best defensive players ever because you're not going to find another 7-footer like that could guard multiple different players of different positions the way that he could.
By the way, Phil, do you know what my favorite NBA team was growing up?
Don't tell me it was the Spurs.
No, it's not the Spurs. No.
the Indiana Pacers.
Indiana Pacers. Do you know
why?
why? Do you know why? But do you know why?
That left shrimp?
Why?
It's a really good reason.
Rick Smits?
Rick Smits, yes.
Oh, damn it.
The Duncan Dutchman. He's the reason basketball was even shown on TV in the Netherlands when I was growing up.
I'm still just going to say fuck you because I hate the Pacers, but but I get it. I get it. Steven, if you would have told me you were a Detlef Schrempf man, I would be. That would give me like definitely two thumbs up there because Detlef Schrempf was awesome. He was
Detlef Schrempf, who was one of his starting lineup figurine my roommate had in our old house together, and also him and Roy Hibbert, who had a pretty good cameo on Parks and Recreation.
You just got promoted to small apple hockey, Steven.
Detlef Schrempf sounds like a cartoon character, to be honest.
No,
it doesn't sound like a real person.
Those early to mid 90s Sonics teams were really good before Sean Kemp started doing all the drugs and shit.
Anyway, I was leading into this. Like, I haven't watched NBA basketball since Rick Smits retired in 2000. This is the first year I've actually started watching games again because the Knicks have a decent team and they beat the Celtics and now they're up against the Pacers. Like, oh shit. But I now there's no Dutchman on the Pacers, so I have no reason to root for them. So since I married a girl from New York, I'm rooting for the Knicks now. So
there you go.
So good.
Yes, and I know Schrempf is German, but I have to. We have to give like the Great White Hope. Detlef Schrempf was one of the Great White Hopes of the 90s.
Also, if you call me German, my grandpa will turn over in his grave.
No, nobody's calling you German.
No. I actually forgot Rick Smits was Dutch, by the way. I forgot for a second. Yeah.
No.
That's actually a good question. The the Sonics beat the Bulls, does Seattle still have a team? I think they do. I don't think you could fold a team that had a championship.
I think no matter what, Quebec was going to move anyway. They were already announced that they were going to move.
I think Quebec would have moved, but I do think it may have delayed it by a year or two because they had a whole new branding that was about to go out. They had like a new logo and a new jersey design.
I saw the logo that they had. It actually looked decent.
It looked pretty cool, actually. Yeah, it's like a wolf, like a Arctic wolf or fox.
It was like the color scheme was sort of like closer to like the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yes,
like the 2000s Timberwolves.
Yeah, but if the Nordiques stay in Quebec for another year and they win a cup, eventually they still would have moved, but it may have delayed it by a couple of years at best.
And Steven, let's never forget something. A lot of people do forget this. A key component to the Nordiques moving and not being in Quebec is why they landed Patrick Roy. They delay for 1 year. They don't get Patrick Roy. You're not trading Patrick Roy to the Quebec Nordiques.
And who was the last team to play the Nordiques?
That would be the New York Rangers. Game 6. I want to look it up. I remember Chris Simon scoring the goal that gave them the lead, if I have it correctly. But if I also am correct, the last Nordique to score a goal in Quebec, I want to say it's Scott Young. I'm not sure though. I gotta now look that up, guys.
You know what? I want, like, Kreider is hated in Quebec as a Ranger against the Canadiens. I wonder if they still hate Knoblauch there for drawing that penalty.
They definitely do. That goal. They definitely still hate Alex Knoblauch for that. And actually, you know who they really hate? They hate Andy Van Hellemond.
Yeah, Van Hellemond.
The last game in Quebec and also the last win was indeed a Scott Young empty netter. Yes.
Okay, good. I was right.
Point for Mark Williams.
Boom. All right.
Do you know who scored for the Rangers that game?
Was that Larmer?
Nope. It was 2 power play goals. They didn't score an empty. It
was just a power play goal.
Pat Verbeek.
Pat Verbeek scored the second. Yep.
Okay.
Peter Nedved.
I remember Verbeek.
Nope. No, Peter Nedved was game 1 versus Pittsburgh. Brian Noonan.
Mark Messier from Graves and Zubov.
Sergei Zubov, to me, will still go down as one of the biggest mistakes the Rangers ever made.
Yeah, look, this is a conversation that comes up once every couple of months. What is the worst trade in Rangers history? And a lot of people say Rick Middleton. I still think it's Zubov. If you trade a player away that becomes a Hall of Famer before he hit his prime for you, that's worse. That's worse.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's worse. And
but his prime was already as a Ranger. He led the 94 Rangers in scoring.
Yeah. I mean,
but how old was he? Like 23, 22, 23?
Yeah, he was young. He was very young. My issue with the Middleton thing is yes, it's the most lopsided because Hodge literally did nothing. But I don't think Middleton puts them over the top against the Islanders or the Oilers in the 80s. I still think you would have to add 2 or 3 more pieces to beat those teams.
Yeah. Zubov was born in 1970, so he was 23 when the Rangers won the Cup. July 1970. So
well, guys, we have gone 2 hours, and let's wrap this one up here, guys. Everybody,
make sure you how long that 15 minutes was.
It was an hour. We went an hour.
15 minutes started yet?
Yeah, it's an hour.
Don't worry, guys. Mark's going to start playing the song, and he'll say that's 5 minutes. That'll turn into another half hour.
Guys, I'm ending the stream now. We've gone on. We've been more than generous.
Mark, it's kind of like when you go out to dinner with your wife and she tells you she's 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to take her out to dinner tonight. So that's why I'm also going to be signing off.
Yeah,
also,
Maria is not like other
You
women.
sure about those 5 minutes?
Mark,
She's not like other women like that.
I, as a married man, I have a tip for you, right?
Okay.
If you have a reservation for, let's say, 7 o'clock,
Mhm.
tell her that the reservation is for 6:30. You'll show up at 6:45.
Maria's not like that though.
She's very punctual.
Maria's not like that.
Yeah, she's great.
But for anyone else listening, just give yourself 30 minutes. If you're 15 minutes late, you're still on time. She feels guilty. You're not stressed out. It's perfect.
And could be the place where we had one of our first dates. So I always love bringing it there. Could be there's a bunch of places, so I can't wait to go.
Where was that?
Seasons 52 in Garden City, or Salt. Trying to figure out which one. Salt on the Water in Merrick.
Ooh,
that's always a good one too.
I think I've been there. That's actually a good place.
Yeah, but we got great hockey talk that we had all day today, guys. So, it's let's wrap this one up right here. We have cranked out at least 12 hours of hockey talk this week, and it is and I got a lot of editing I have to do. Steven, once again, thanks for coming on and coming out of the bullpen. We always love to have our Mr. Anthony Larocco joining us. And I mean, hell, Matt said great show, guys, about an hour ago. So
yeah,
that tells you how this is going. Guys, everybody, thank you very much. We will see you soon.